Kia ora, guys. Ko te rere, te manga, ko tamaki te awa, no, ko Pakeha te iwi, no tamaki makaro aho, ko Garvey tako whānau, ko Michael tako ingoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Kia ora, and thank you so much for coming along. I actually get really blown away when I show up to an event and there's a room full of people, it's their spare time and they've come to listen to me talk. So thank you for coming. As the introduction, I'm Michael and I'm the founder of Foodprint, which is an app where you can purchase surplus and imperfect food. And I thought rather than kind of stand in a room full of people who have come to listen to sustainability, you probably know how bad food waste is. So I thought I'd sort of share with you my journey of starting Foodprint. I think I was kind of I learned really early on in my career that I needed to work in an industry or a job that I was passionate about, and ideally something where I knew that I'd be reducing my impact on the planet. And I was the child of an entrepreneur, so the thought of starting my own business sort of like wasn't actually as scary as it is for I think a lot of people out there. You know, everyone's always like, "Oh, isn't that scary?" And I'm like, "Oh, it just kind of happened." So I just sort of needed to figure out how I was going to combine all my passions and translate that into a business, essentially. I think I'm meant to have done that. Cool. So when I was at university, I went off to Colorado for my uni summers. It's their winters. I worked in the luxury ski resorts. And I was a banquet server. I think we have that there. It's baby me. And it doesn't look that luxury. That was kind of a bit of a basement room, but I promise it was a really nice hotel. And so some days we would be serving these banquets where literally as much food as what had got eaten would end up in the bin. And it just seemed so crazy to me. And I'd be going to my colleagues like, shouldn't we do something about this? Or like, why are we putting that in the bin? It's so wasteful. It's a waste of all the resources, as well as the impacts on climate change when it, is decomposing. But my colleagues were just saying, "Oh, this is what we do." And essentially the rules were that because, we had to put out all of that food on the buffet so that the guests felt like they, could eat as much as they wanted and that they'd get their first choice of all that food. But then because that food had been on the buffet, it just had to get thrown out for food safety reasons. And of course, this is America, they love to sue. And even like us staff who were, paid fairly minimum wage salary or wages, we weren't really meant to take the food home either, but I was never very good at that role. Then fast forward a few more years, in my last OE, I was in London working for HelloFresh. And this was kind of well before they were in New Zealand and at the time where they were just starting to really make a change in the food scene in the UK. I think that this was like the time, it was like my introduction into food tech, but it was also the time where like food waste kind of came back into my like daily vernacular. And we'd always be talking about how we as a company reduced food waste in the home because the customers are given those little tiny packets of exactly how much food is needed for the recipes. And I think the meal kits are really great for reducing food waste in the home. But what I also kind of found was that food, sort of throughout with my colleagues and stuff, it felt like it had lost its value. And people would just really easily throw it out and just without really thinking about it, just sort of in the office. And I sort of got this reputation for like going around and making sure that stuff was taken home. And so it was just this sort of another little reminder of what I'm passionate about there. And then I also had the opportunity to work on this project. So while I was at HelloFresh, they were in the process of moving from a contract sort of packing and distribution centre into our own custom-built one. And they'd done a few tests of like how that process was going to go. But before they started migrating over, they needed to do a proper test. And someone higher up decided that they were going to pack 2,500 boxes. So that's 3 meals for 2 people. So it's a hell of a lot of food. But we couldn't use those in our box count for that week because if something went wrong, then we'd be letting our customers down. And so somehow myself and one of the founders in the UK, Patrick, were tasked with coming up with a solution for these 2,500 boxes. We ended up partnering with a food redistribution charity in the UK called the Felix Project. You'd think the easy solution would have been just to give them all the boxes of food, right? That's not how Patrick does things. What we did instead was stay up for 72 hours and packed the boxes into... Oh, what have I done? I've turned it off. That one. Into train stations like this at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And then we would give people the boxes for the price that they wanted to pay for it. And over the 2 days that the event ran for, we raised just under £40,000. And all of those proceeds went to the Felix Project. That's Patrick there. I didn't have any photos of myself at 3 a.m. packing boxes. He went down for the photo op. So this £40,000 went to the Felix Project, and what that meant was that they were going to be able to buy a new temperature-controlled vehicle that was going to give them access to a whole other area of London where they would be able to collect the food and then redistribute it to those people in need. And I didn't really know it at the time because I was an exhausted mess, but this project really was sort of something that cemented for me that food waste was an area that I wanted to continue working in. So I finished up my time there and I went to Sweden. It's not normally super high up on the list of places that people go to live, but there I was. And I got there, I'd been there on holiday, I thought it seemed pretty livable, and I knew 2 people there, so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go to Sweden. And I got there and I started applying for jobs. And I just couldn't shake this feeling that I'd had from my experience in London, which was that if I had sort of known how technology works or been able to write or understand a little bit of code, that I would have been able to do heaps more with my job there. And so I decided to scrap looking for jobs and started looking for web development courses. And honestly, if you had told the Michael that left New Zealand in 2015 that just over 2 years later I'd be living in Stockholm and writing code, then I actually just would have thought you were totally mad, but there I was. And so I was a student in one of the most expensive cities in the world, and a friend of mine was like, hey, have you seen these apps? There's a couple of them, give them a download. It's a really great way of being able to explore the city, getting access to a whole bunch of the awesome eateries we have, but everything's discounted, and you're preventing food from being wasted. I was like, hang on, what? So I download the app, and I can still remember the first purchase I made was from my local supermarket. I got a ball of fresh mozzarella cheese for the equivalent of about 50 New Zealand cents, so usually like $8. And I was just like, this idea is genius. This cheese is delicious. Why has this not been done before? And moreover, why is it not being done in New Zealand? And then that's when obviously the light bulb moment happened where I was like, hang on, I'm going to go home and do this. So I finished up my course, and about 2 months later, I was on a plane home. I had this grand idea plan, but no idea how I was going to execute it. And just under a year later, Foodprint was in the App Store, and here we are. So, yeah, I think I'm well over time, so I'll leave it there, but thank you guys so much.